B1 family, welcome to Blacklogic. Today, we're going to dive into some deep issues affecting our community and empowering ourselves through knowledge. So today we have a special guest whose groundbreaking investigative work has exposed the dark underbelly of right-wing extremism, shedding light on the sinister tactics employed by the groups in our society. Joining us today is no other than Jordan Green, an investigative correspondent based in Greensboro, North Carolina. Jordan is a seasoned journalist who has dedicated his career to uncovering the truth behind some of the most pressing issues of our time. His work has been featured in prestigious publications such as The Washington Post, The Daily Beast, and The Nation, just to name a few of them. Jordan's recent article titled "Inside the Neo-Nazi Hate Network Grooming Children for a Race War," published by no other than Raw Story, has sent shockwaves through the nation. His in-depth investigation pulls back the curtain on a disturbing reality, exposing how hate groups are targeting and indoctrinating our youth, fueling the flames of bigotry and division. But Jordan's commitment to truth and justice extends far beyond this groundbreaking piece. With a career spanning over 16 years, he has fearlessly tackled issues ranging from housing and policing to nonprofit corruption and racial discrimination. His dedication to investigative journalism has earned him accolades, including awards from the Association of Alternative News Media and the North Carolina Press Association. So today we have the privilege of diving into Jordan's insight, learning from his experiences, and gaining a deeper understanding of the forces that's playing in our society. So without further ado, let's welcome Jordan Green. Thank you, Jordan Green, for joining me today on this powerful broadcast on Blacklogic. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Ray, so much for having me. I'm looking forward to speaking with you and your listeners today.
Likewise, and we are glad to have you, sir. Again, thank you very much. So let's just jump right into it. Your article shed light on a disturbing reality. The neo-Nazi hate network that are grooming children for a race war. What first compelled you to investigate and expose this dark phenomenon?
Well, there's really a resurgence of activity by violent neo-Nazis. The kind of term that experts use is accelerationism, the part of the neo-Nazi movement that believes like that violent revolution is the way to achieve their objectives. And I really started looking into this segment in late 2022 when there was a lot of targeting of LGBTQ events and violence targeted at the gay community and drag performances. And
okay.
There was this movement expressed itself in my part of the world in North Carolina with an attack on the power grid and electric substation in Moore County, North Carolina.
So on the infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. And, so these two tactics, attacking infrastructure and harassing LGBTQ people, were converging. And I got access to the Telegram channels and, basically how I learned about 2119 Blood and Soil Crew. Actually, unbeknownst to me, one of the members was interviewed by the FBI like a month before that attack on the electrical substation. And he had made some posts burning a LGBTQ pride flag and talking about going to a rally of some sort. And it's clear that he made posts involving firearms. So this is kind of the milieu, and that's what brought me to this particular group, 2119 Blood and Soil.
Really great article. I do encourage everyone to go to Raw Story and actually read this article. Very powerful information. Some of the symbolism that you put inside this. How large would you say that the network, how big is the network, would you say, as far as them grooming? Because if you, can you please expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. The number of unique Telegram profiles associated with this group that I saw is about 24. Another member who spoke to me on condition of anonymity told me there are hundreds of members. That might be exaggerated, but I would say that 2119 is representative of a larger trend. And this is like one of the maybe most active groups, and they have like specific crimes that are associated with them that are under investigation, but there are others like them. 2119, they have members across the country. Definitely a handful of very active members in Texas, but they have members in California, from California to New Hampshire.
Wow. So basically a pretty large group. And I guess you can't give an accurate estimation just because that the network, is it very intricate, or is it very large, or is it just very secretive, or how do they mask this to a point where you don't know the actual numbers? Because I'm pretty sure they're not reporting these things to one another.
Yeah, I don't know if they actually have a membership role. I mean, they have a vetting channel on Telegram. I would say it's kind of a franchise model where they're recruiting people all across the United States, and they're actually globally linked because it's the internet.
Wow.
And they're basically getting people from across the country to sign on, and then starting with kind of flyering or low-level graffiti, and then moving up to crimes that target specific institutions like synagogues or mosques, and actually committing hate crimes, and then filming that, putting it on Telegram so that they can use it for propaganda to recruit and spread further.
Now, you mentioned hate crimes. What do you believe that their main target of hate crimes are?
This group, their main target has been Jews. However, in Pensacola, for instance, a member is charged with attacking 2 synagogues, throwing bricks with anti-Semitic slurs and swastikas through the windows. However, they've also vandalized a Martin Luther King Jr. monument in Concord, North Carolina. So it really comes out of white power ideology is predominantly a racist ideology. But if you think about it, any kind of fascism is kind of the exaltation of inequality. So we're talking about primarily, hatred of Jews, but also trying to ethnically cleanse people of color, pushing out immigrants, pushing out Muslims, certainly, men subjugating women, and eradicating LGBTQ people. So their hatred is directed at many targets.
Okay. Now, I will revisit that when it comes to race. I have some more targeted questions, but I do have a couple other things I want to ask slightly before that. Now, can you elaborate on the tactics used by these hate groups to indoctrinate and recruit young individuals into their extremist ideology?
So they prey on loneliness, a sense of inadequacy. Young white men specifically is who they're recruiting, who feel out of place, and who feel uncomfortable or insecure about the way that Black folks have been asserting their rights and their claim to human dignity through the racial justice protests and in response to police killings. They are reacting to LGBTQ people and trans people gaining rights in the past decade. And so they recruit online, and I was told that Wayland Fowler, the founder of this group, specifically would plant discriminatory ideas in the other member, or just networking and recruiting from gaming platforms to get other alienated young white boys and specifically plant discriminatory, hateful ideas, and then push them to go out and express them through graffiti. So yeah, that's kind of it.
Are there parents, as far as your investigation is concerned, were parents involved in some of the recruitment or the training or the acceptance of this extremist ideology in allowing their children to be a part of this network?
From everything that I could tell from speaking with parents or from seeing what the teenage neo-Nazis are saying about their parents, the parents don't approve. I mean, I would say typically the parents are more conservative, even Trump supporters. But I mean, one member talks about, when his parents, when he ordered some neo-Nazi stickers through the mail, his parents made him throw them away. They took away his combat boots and grounded him in punishment. And unfortunately, he continued to be active in promoting and networking online even after that.
Wow. Okay. Now, what role do online platforms and social media play in facilitating the spread of hate speech and the radicalization among impressionable youth as highlighted in your article?
It's such a huge question, and I don't I'll do my best to answer it, but
sure.
It's a completely different world for adolescents and teenagers coming online than it was for me when I joined Facebook in 2008 or whenever. A lot of it is the algorithm, whether it's the mainstream platforms like YouTube or Instagram. I've heard that YouTube has improved its algorithm, but it leads young people, as we know, to more extreme content to keep them hooked. And then when they find out about Telegram, it is a platform that specifically kind of uniquely caters to extremists. And it is part of their value proposition is that they never turn over their data to law enforcement because they have servers in like a dozen different jurisdictions. So it's almost like impossible to get a process served to subpoena private messages. Once they get on to Telegram, it's just kind of a cesspool of extreme racism. I mean, gore images. It is. I feel sickened even thinking about some of the things that I've seen. Violence against people of color, and it is designed to desensitize young people and to kind of condition them towards violence.
Wow. I guess the repetition of certain imagery and acts to make it more acceptable and make it more normalized so they can go out and commit these sort of violent acts. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we'll add, just like talking about the extremism of the kind of things that these teenagers are talking about. It is valorizing mass shooters, racially motivated mass shooters who they describe in very sick ways, saints. I talked about the attack on industrial infrastructure. There's like how-to manuals. So these teenagers are steeped in this, and many of them who are 16 and 17 have been ingesting this content for 3 or 4 years. And so, I point out in the article that right now they're committing hate crimes through vandalism, but the kind of violence that they're celebrating online is much more extreme than that. And so that's
Wow.
why I find it, dangerous, the track that they're on. And I might add that I feel that this kind of conduct might be minimized by society or law enforcement because it could be construed as just misguided teenagers who are made a bad decision, bad judgment.
Right.
But they're on a trajectory for much more serious violence, and they adopt this paramilitary aesthetic, and they talk about themselves as being involved in a war. And I think that it's
Be involved in a race war, so to speak.
In a race war, yeah, that they will
Yeah.
escalate to that if they're not discouraged and deterred.
I guess that poses another question for me. How do you believe society can better protect the vulnerability of youth falling prey to these hate groups and ideologies?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that question. It's a tough one, but at the end of the day, if we're not trying to answer that question, then all of my investigation is really for nothing.
Correct.
But yeah, so I mean, the experts that I talk to use the word resiliency, and I think to me, it really just goes back to creating social bonds in that tie. We're talking about young white boys here into a larger fabric of society, so taking some of the things that they're getting, the positive things that they're getting from being online, the camaraderie, and finding healthy substitutes. These teenagers, they really like physical fitness, and they like the outdoors, and there's nothing wrong with those activities, and those can be kind of funneled into a social context where there's high social solidarity across lots of race and class and sexual orientation. What else? I don't know. I mean, I'd come back to the fact that the internet has just really changed things, and that it allows people to young people to join niche online communities where they get reinforcement of their extremism rather than having interactions in the real world where they're going to get some feedback for expressing racist viewpoints, and some of it may be rough or some of it may be soft, but they can kind of have some give and take and potentially adjust.
In your investigations, did you uncover any specific cases or examples that I know you went over earlier, that there's some things, some images, maybe some video clippings that you saw that shocked you? Was there anything in particular that you could briefly describe that disturbed you the most?
The thing that disturbed me the most, and images of people, Black people are killed by the police are common in this Telegram social online space. But I mean, one image, a nude female body beheaded. I mean, the violence and sexual objectification together. I mean, the whole thing's just to dehumanize, desensitize, and it's a lot.
Wow. I mean, I understand that the article mentions the targeting of children as young as, I believe, 11 years of age. What challenges do law enforcement and communities face in identifying and intervening in such cases? Like, how could one, I guess, have signs to know that their child may be involved in such ideology that could convert them to be an extremist?
Yeah, I think that major sign for parents is like if the child is withdrawn. Yeah, and then you asked about law enforcement, and I think that law enforcement probably needs to be more aggressive and sophisticated, because we were talking about Telegram, and it is anonymous profiles. So, I mean, you have to scour a lot of these chats to look for biographical details. And I don't know that law enforcement is really kind of caught up with the technology. But I mean, it's a different question.
So it's difficult for them to infiltrate certain social media apps that they're using to communicate.
Maybe difficult, or they may just not have the resources or will to do it. I mean, I think that, you know, there are anonymous researchers who I depend on for a lot of my reporting, who are much more sophisticated and spend extensive amounts of time researching and unmasking extremists on Telegram. And so it's just a matter of whether law enforcement is willing to put the same amount of time and effort into it.
I guess according to the resources that they may or may not have, even though law enforcement in each presidency has had large budgets that they have. I know Joe Biden, I don't know what political party you're affiliated with, but he actually increased police funding nationwide. And I know that doesn't really go down to the states, but I just wondered, with the amount of money and the militarization of local law enforcement, I wonder, do they still have the resources as far as online social media platforms to infiltrate? Because
they have. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say they have more than adequate resources. Okay. It's a question of allocation of resources. So right.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's been shown time and again that law enforcement the FBI specifically, it's been inordinately focused on leftists and people of color harassing civil rights groups, and they have just had incredible blind spots when it comes to right-wing extremists. I mean, one of many examples, having dozens of informants in the Proud Boys when they attacked the U.S. Capitol.
Right.
We were trying to use the Proud Boys to get information about Antifa, and they failed to exploit their resources and uncover the plot to attack the U.S. Capitol. So it's really just a question of directing the resources appropriately based on the threat.
Right. I mean, so what response do you expect from policymakers and law enforcement agencies after the publication of your article?
I wish I wasn't as cynical, but I, as we know, our Congress is very dysfunctional, so I haven't really have high expectations for members of Congress to tackle this issue. But I do hope that law enforcement will take this as that law enforcement will look at these groups as enterprises that cross state lines. And from what I can tell now, local law enforcement is investigating these as like discrete incidents in their local jurisdictions, and they may get some assistance from the FBI in kind of identifying the groups. But given that this is a national network and even with international links, I think that the FBI needs to look at the network and look at who's driving the recruitment and propaganda, and not just the kids that are perpetrating these specific incidents of vandalism.
One thing I just wanted to point out, because you brought this up, and I was looking over your Twitter page here, and you posted this on January 6th, the exact day that this was happening, correct?
Right.
And
Like
what,
7 a.m. in the morning.
and what was eye-opening about what you posted is that basically you already knew what was going to happen based upon the many years you have investigating and understanding the way extremism happened. Because lastly, you said here, armed extremists see a green light to engage in political violence. So you already knew what essentially was going to occur.
Yeah, because I mean, I had at that time there was a lot of organizing going on a platform called Parler, and I was following the Proud Boys in North Carolina, and I mean, there was just extreme violence. I mean, there was, as this article says, there was a specific plan to attack the Capitol, and they're talking about like, let's kill Congress. There was a commentary that an anti-fascist researcher, actually a journalist, I should say, Molly Conger, exposed of a sheriff's deputy in the Mid-Atlantic region who was specifically saying, you know, instead of going to the Capitol on January 6th, you should go, you know, kill your local judge. And so it was all out in the open, and all this information was available to the FBI as well. They evidently failed to communicate it to the Capitol Police to allow them to you know, appropriately stage their resources to repel the attack on the Capitol.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you envision communities coming together to, I guess, combat the influence of hate groups and promote trying to dissolve this rhetoric that is, you know, plaguing the nation secretly, and as you stated before, it starts off with, you know, petty crimes of vandalism, and then it goes into actual hate crimes of violence and maybe even murder. How do you believe communities should combat this, especially those communities that are enclaves where the demographics are mainly Caucasian white people?
Well, I mean, one thing that I'd say is that that solidarity, cross-group solidarity, interracial solidarity, multi-faith solidarity is really the most important thing, because if you look at the way fascist groups operate, they seek to split people against each other and erode trust. And the antidote to that is people coming together and supporting each other across those lines of difference. I mean, an example that I would give to you is in Pensacola, the 2119 members who were charged, I mean, they attacked synagogues, and then they also are accused of attacking a mosque, and they sprayed a Star of David on the mosque, and one of the defendants actually told the police that their aim was to pit those two groups, Muslims and Jews, against each other. So I think, you know, I don't think we really have a broad-based anti-fascist movement in the United States, people coming together across lines to combat this kind of hate. Now, you asked about predominantly white communities, and I guess, and you're right, these groups do target, these groups do tend to come out of rural communities and suburban communities, and so I think it's just important that people, you know, speak up for people of color in those communities and LGBTQ people who may be less visible. And I mean, people of all different faiths and races live all over the country, and so it's important to just speak up, especially for people who are in the the white majority in those communities.
Okay. And in reviewing your article, there was a couple of pictures I just had a brief question or brief questions for you. Like this one, we are everywhere. And under the still picture here, it states that the 2119 paramilitary aesthetic. Now, are these people actually training with firearms and military tactics? And if that's so, are they starting off, as stated before, at the age of 11 of these military tactics, or that starts to graduate as they get older?
I think it's probably not training a lot, but I mean, they have made posts where they show pictures of young men with pistols in their waistbands and just saying, like, be ready for anything. And they're also talking about claiming skate parks as all white spaces, and talking about using the N-word to assail Black people. And so they are there is a high risk of violence given their posture and belief systems and background. Now, I will say that some of the older Nazis that they're linked up to are maybe active members of the military or have been kicked out of the military for their extremism. So they have access to training and experience with weapons. So it is a concern as they go down this road that they will become more engaged in paramilitary training, even if they aren't at this moment.
Okay, I do want to revisit. We were talking about race, and I just want to have a concentration when it comes to foundational Black Americans, not immigrants, not people of color, not Hispanics, not Jews, just Black Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Through your investigation, what would you say the concentration of hate when it came to Black Americans, and using references of the N-word or anything that's derogatory, pejorative, that may be a racial slur or trope that they may use to reference or to expose their hate?
Well, in the chats, like the N-word is just like ubiquitous and used to disparage Black people, and also used with each other. I mean, they kind of like mimic the way they think that Black people use the N-word as a term of fellowship, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then in their propaganda videos, I mean, they have posted images of graffiti that says "kill N-words," and so it's very extreme. And
I was going to ask, do you believe that the hate when it comes to non-white, is it equal, or is there a certain concentration that they focus on more? Because I know you stated about Jews and synagogues, but you also stated about immigrants. You also talk about Black people and other people. What would you say their major concentration that their hate is directed towards? Or is it just a generalized hate that one day they're talking about Jews, the next day they're talking about Black folk, next day they're talking about Hispanics, the next day, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mistake to get too focused on the specific group, because look at the tactic of the mass shootings and the violent shooters that they valorize. I mean, Dylan Roof, who massacred people, worshipers in a Black church in Charleston, South Carolina.
Correct.
Another is the individual who shot Hispanic people in Walmart in El Paso, with the idea that he was deterring immigrants. Several mass shootings in synagogues in Pittsburgh and San Diego. One target of violence for neo-Nazis is just the intelligentsia, the politicians, the media, One mass shooter that they really valorize is a Norwegian neo-Nazi who in 2011 killed, dozens of young people on an island that were at a summer camp that was for kind of liberal politicians. I think it's just important to look at how this violence is targeted towards eradicating and subjugating, basically all people who are not white straight men.
I guess the reason for that question is because, according to the FBI crime data, stemming back from the time that I looked at the reports on their website, is that the majority of hate crimes in America are conducted towards Black Americans. So that's what I was asking. In the grooming of these children, of course, they're growing up to be part of maybe the different racist extremist groups that we have in America. And a lot of those acts, I know you stated one with Dylan Roof, there have been others, but the majority of these crimes, and even to a point where it comes to police brutality, and I know this kind of goes out the realm of your article, but if you have a comment or not, I just want to know your thoughts on it. That majority of the crimes are conducted against Black Americans. Do you believe that this is the breeding ground, the training ground that encourages such acts? And the only reason why I ask is because I want to know if they lean more to one group to harm them more so than others, even though they hate all non-white groups.
I don't know that they do lean towards another group or one specific group, but certainly Black people are a target. As some other examples, which you and your listeners are probably familiar with, is the mass shooting at the grocery store in Buffalo, and I believe that was in 2022, and shortly after that in Jacksonville, Florida. You're absolutely right that police violence is inordinately targeted at Black people and other people of color, and I will definitely say that I've observed neo-Nazis feeding off of the way that police devalue people of color, devalue their lives, celebrating the police violence, and then rooting for whenever a white police officer is put on trial, rooting for the police officer to be to have the charges dismissed.
Regardless of their wrongdoing.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. They just take it as an item of faith that the officer, in their view, is justified in shooting and taking the life of a Black person, even though they generally hate cops. Neo-Nazis hate cops because they see that the cops are, to them, the cops are a deterrent to their aims of violent revolution. There's another point that I wanted to make. Yes, and in terms of the way that the racism of neo-Nazis is expressed towards Black people, very much in the way that it is by MAGA or conservatives or society at large, is they falsely equate Black people with crime and equate and play up crime in urban areas, and they use that as kind of like a justification for why they don't want to live around Black people and why you should be afraid of them, and then that fear in turn justifies their idea of arming and training and preparing for violence. That kind of anti-Black racism is very much like the bread and butter of their ideology. And expressed differently towards Jews, of course. Jews they view as kind of like almost a supernatural master race that is in their wild conspiracy theory is manipulating all of these other groups that they despise. And in that way, it's also racist towards Black people because they're taking away the agency of Black people and just saying that they're manipulated by Jews.
No, it's funny that you said that they believe that Jews are this master race when they're dealing in white supremacist ideology. It's contradicting in a sense.
It is, but I mean, they have to externalize some kind of like enemy in order to justify their own intention to eradicate other faiths and races.
Makes
so
perfect sense.
They have to create a boogeyman, in other words.
Absolutely, have to create a boogeyman. I'm gonna have just two questions for you left. One is if you can define or help me better understand the symbols and pictures here. Let me see if I can blow this up just a little bit more. Sorry about that. Let's see, here we go. Can you tell us a breakdown of what these symbols and a lot of what these images mean here?
Okay, so the swastika is obviously a symbol of the Third Reich and Nazism in the middle, and then 2119 is a numeric code for blood and soil crew, or blood and soil. 2 for B, blood, 1 for A, and 19 for S, soil. Blood and soil is a slogan of the Nazis in Germany, which equates people of the white race with the land, the soil. And then in the middle, you have a Celtic cross, which is kind of a more subtle Nazi symbol.
Are you referring to this one over here?
Yes, in the center, right?
Okay, yeah, right here.
Yeah, right, and the O is in the word blood. And
here, okay, in the word blood, okay.
Yeah. And anyway, I just noticed that the S is like shaped like a lightning bolt, which is also from neo-Nazi ideology. The SS is like the violent Nazi paramilitary. In the lower right-hand corner, you have a very crude depiction of Jews, which is common in neo-Nazi white supremacist ideology to depict them as like kind of an unhuman, conniving whatever. And so you have this image of a fist punching a Jew in the head.
Wow.
And I can't really see the sticker.
Yeah, it's a very small sticker. I'm gonna see if I can just blow it up just one more time. Let's see here. Yeah, that's much I can blow it up. I don't know if you can see that it's kind of out of focus as well.
Yeah, I can. I'm not really sure. Oh, and I would add the quote is by George Lincoln Rockwell, the founder of the American Nazi Party in the 1950s. So
even Rome during its decline never reached the depths to which America has already sunk.
So, I mean, he's saying like that Nazis are kind of, they're kind of obsessed with this idea of degeneracy, and that a powerful leader, authoritarian leader, needs to take control and redeem the country, often by taking it back to some mythical roots. Yes, so there you go.
You know, and what's funny about some of the symbols, and the one that I'm just going to harp on the most, is that they bastardized the swastika, because originally the swastika, I think, was found in ancient Egypt, and then they found other signs of the swastika in India, and basically this swastika means well-being or peace. So through the Nazi Third Reich, they kind of flipped and changed and transformed that swastika to mean something totally different, this original creation of it. I don't know if you know the history of the swastika in any form. So
I think that it actually, as you say, it comes from India. But
by the way of ancient Egypt, they first saw the first, not as an exact form what we see it now, but the actual configuration of it was first found in ancient Egypt and then later found in a more simplistic form in India.
I guess the thing that I fall back to is that now it predominantly means white supremacy and
Correct.
The genocide of Jews and other people who were considered enemies of the German Third Reich.
And I believe my last question for you, I just want to get a breakdown of neo-Nazi in itself. How do you have any information, historical references of what does the term neo-Nazi mean? Neo-Nazi, and as well as how did this movement originally started? Did it started when the first Nazi came over here that the American government brought over here because of their technology from the war, or did they somehow sneak over here? Do you know the history, or how did they start in America?
Well, neo simply means new, so it's to differentiate between the Nazis of the Third Reich and Germany. So I mean, we could, or maybe we should just say Nazi, because we're obviously talking about people today.
Right.
The history of the movement is the American Nazi Party was founded, I believe, in the 1950s, not too long after World War II. And you know, as with other white supremacist movements, it was very much in reaction to the civil rights movement and Black people asserting their rights and their dignity. I kind of say neo-Nazi as a shorthand, but I think white power is like maybe a more apt description of the movement, and it really kind of dates back to the early 80s when you had the Ku Klux Klan and Nazis merged. Prior to then, there were differences because many Ku Klux Klan members fought with the Allies in World War II. And just kind of to try to pack in and summarize, there was a turn in the white supremacist or white power movement in the early 80s towards a revolutionary goal of collapsing the American system because they lost faith that they could control the United States government. Previously white supremacist groups were involved in vigilante activity to kind of extend the racism, the white supremacy of the state. And in the 1980s, you know, they started actively talking about toppling the United States government. And so you see that going through Timothy McVeigh bombing the Oklahoma City Federal Building. And then more recently, terrorist groups like Atomwaffen and the Base have kind of taken on this idea of guerrilla warfare to try to topple the United States government. And that's the culture that these 2119 kids come out of.
I do have one bonus question. I think my viewers would be upset if I didn't at least pose the question, ask the question. In your extensive investigative research through your, many years of covering extremism in America, how many groups, how many people in white society, as far as percentage, do you believe upholds or hold on to the values of white ideology and supremacism? Or I guess a better question would be, when it comes to extremism and bigotry and racism, through your investigations and through your history, what is the percentage or number of groups you believe exist in America?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard question because there are gradients. I mean, many white people, including liberal white people, are very invested in white supremacy.
You said liberal.
I did, and this is outside the realm of my work, but I mean, you can just look at like the backlash, the resistance against affordable housing. People who predominantly white, affluent neighborhoods, they want to keep out multifamily housing, and which provides opportunity to working class people, including many working class people of color, to go to good schools, to have access to jobs. And so, yes, I mean, I think that, so you have liberal white people who are invested in white supremacy. And then further down that gradient, you have MAGA people, Trump supporters, who are invested in kind of more actively invested in maintaining white dominance, or reclaiming some of the dominance that white people kind of enjoyed without challenge. And then
the fear of competition.
And the MAGA people would deny that they're racist, as most white people do. The group that we've been talking about, 2119 and White Power, they are the most extreme in that they very openly and honestly proclaim their racism, and they see violence as the way to pursue their agenda. So I think it's just kind of hard to really break down and quantify, but maybe better just to look at it in kind of a broad societal level than specific groups.
So I guess what I'm getting is there's no exact number or percentage that we can put it on, but it's enormous. It's gigantic.
I mean, let's be honest, white supremacy is at the root of our country, going back to 1619. So that's like a much bigger job than simply rooting out extremism to build a future that is free from white supremacy. And as far as the violent white supremacists, I would just say their impact, they're relatively small in number, but their impact is much more extensive than those numbers.
Well, thank you for your transparency. Thank you for your honesty. Believe me, I do appreciate it. Thank you for coming to Blacklogic today. And thank you for all the information about your article to help us better understand white ideology, the extremism that's plaguing our country, and how they're starting from the youth as early as 11 years of age. Do you have any last comments, Jordan?
I just want to say it's really a privilege to speak to you and your audience. So thank you so much for having me on your program.
Thank you so much, Jordan. You have a good day, sir.
Okay, thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
Be one.